The rain had followed him for 3 days, and now it clung to the shoulders of his coat like a second skin. He pulled the collar higher and let the horse walk slow through the mud. The road bent past a low stone wall, then past a wooden gate, and then the great house rose out of the grey. Ravenwood, his own house. The house he had not seen in 11 months, the house he was about to walk into as a stranger. He had planned it careful. The good coat was in the trunk at the inn 6 miles back. The signet ring was tied inside a leather pouch under his shirt. His boots were worn at the heel on purpose. He had rubbed a little road dust into the wool of his cuffs. The coat he wore now was well made, but it was old, and the sleeve had been mended once by a hand that was not a tailor's. To any eye in the yard, he would look like a man of small means. A land agent's clerk, maybe. A tradesman's son come to ask after work. Nothing more. He had his reasons. He kept them close, the way another man might keep a knife. The last woman his family had chosen for him had wept prettily in the drawing-room and laughed cruelly at a stable boy in the yard, and he had seen both in the same hour. He had ended that match by letter the next morning. He had not been kind about it, and he did not regret it. Since then, he did not trust what any woman showed him in a lit room. He wanted to see her first in a place where no one was performing for a duke. Her name was Marin Ashcombe. Her father had written to him from a small manor in the North Country, offering her as a match, and the letter had been so honest about the family's debts that it had almost made him laugh. Almost. He had written back and asked for a portrait, and the portrait had shown a young woman with a straight mouth and steady eyes and no smile, and he had liked the no smile very much. He had sent word that he would come and stay a fortnight and take a proper look at the girl and the house and the arrangement. He had sent that word for 1 day next week. Today, he came in the rain. Alone. 6 days early. He came as no one at all. The gatekeeper at Ravenwood did not know him well. The Duke had inherited the estate only 2 winters past, and he had spent most of that time in London and at his other seat in the south. The gatekeeper squinted through the rain, saw a wet man on a tired horse, and asked his business. "Come from the North Road," the man said. His voice was pitched lower than his own, and softer. Heard the house might want an extra hand for the fortnight. Fires and such. Whatever wants doing. The gatekeeper thought about it. He was a slow man, kind enough, and he shrugged. "Try round the back," he said. "Housekeeper's Mrs. Peel. Tell her Tom said to try. She'll say yes or no." Obliged, he rode round to the back and gave the horse over to a stable lad who did not look at him twice. The rain was heavier now, and it came off the eaves in a steady thin sheet, and the sound of it on the flagstones was almost like a voice. He smelled wet straw and horse and the sharp iron of the water pump. He smelled his own damp wool. He smelled wood smoke from the kitchen chimney, and under that, faint and warm, the smell of bread. Mrs. Peel was a woman of about 60, with a face like a folded letter. She looked him up and down in the passage between the pantry and the scullery, and she asked 3 questions, and he answered them all careful. He gave a false name. Crispin Vale. It was near enough to his own that he would answer to it without a flinch, and far enough that no one in this house would connect it to the Duke of Ravenwood. "You've the look of a man who has done proper work, Mrs." Peel said at last. "I'll take you on the fortnight. Bed in the loft over the stable. Meals in the kitchen. 2 shillings the week. Fair, you'll do what you're told, Missa. Vale, yes, ma'am. And you'll not go into the front rooms without your scent, not for any reason. Yes, ma'am." She looked at him one more time, and something moved behind her eyes that he did not like. And then it passed. "Get out of that wet coat before you drip on my clean floor," she said. "There's tea in the pot." "Sit," he sat. He had not sat in a kitchen in 15 years. The bench under him was scrubbed pale, and the wood was warm, where the fire reached it. A copper kettle on the hob breathed a low, steady hiss. Somewhere behind him, a knife came down on a board in a steady rhythm. Chop, chop, chop. And then paused. And then went on. The kitchen smelled of onions and butter, and the sharp green of parsley. He wrapped his cold hands around the tin cup Mrs. Peel set in front of him, and felt the heat come up through his knuckles like a small mercy. "Miss Ashcombe," he said, after a while. He kept his voice light, the voice of a servant idly curious. "That's the young lady of the house?" Mrs. Peel did not look up from her ledger. "That is not your business, Mr. Vale, no, ma'am. But since you'll be in the yard when she rides out, and since you'll be in the passage when she comes down to see about the linens on Thursday, I will tell you this much. You will speak to Miss Ashcombe if she speaks to you first, and you will not speak to her otherwise. You will not stare. You will not stand in her way. You will do your work, and you will be invisible. Do you understand me, Missy Vale?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good." He drank the tea. It was strong and slightly bitter, and it warmed him all the way down. He thought, with something almost like a smile hidden behind the cup, that he had been a duke for 2 winters, and he had not been spoken to that plainly since he was 8 years old. He found he did not mind it. He did not see her that first day. He carried in wood for 3 fires, and swept out the old ash, and rehung a shutter that had come loose in the wind. He ate a bowl of stew in the kitchen, with 2 stable men, and a boy who could not have been more than 12. And he listened. He did not ask questions. He listened to the way the servants talked, when they thought no one important was in the room, and that was worth more than any polite drawing-room conversation he could have had upstairs. They spoke of Miss Ashcombe the way people speak of weather they are used to, not with love and not with dislike, with a plain kind of trust. She came down early. She did not shout. She had known each of them by name inside a week of coming home from her aunt's, and she had not forgotten a name yet. She had asked the stable lad about his mother's cough, and she had asked twice, a week apart, which meant she had remembered on her own. She had told Mrs. Peel to give the scullery girl a full afternoon off when the girl's brother was buried, and had gone herself to the kitchen and rolled out the pastry for the pies that afternoon, so Mrs. Peel would not be short-handed. She had done this quietly, and she had not spoken of it after. The Duke, who was not a duke here, listened, and he tucked each small fact into the same place in his mind where he kept the shape of a contract or the meaning of a look. He was a man who solved problems. He was a man who read people the way another man reads a field before he buys it. He was learning this house without being seen learning it. He saw her the next morning. He was in the yard with an armful of split logs when she came down the kitchen steps. She was not dressed for company. She wore a plain grey gown and a shawl wrapped tight against the wet, and her hair was pinned back so simple that it was almost severe. She was younger than the portrait had made him think. Perhaps 22. She had a slight shadow under her eyes that he had not seen in the paint, and it made her look less like a girl posed for a match and more like a person who slept badly some nights. She did not see him at first. She was looking at a bucket that had been set out for the rain and was full to the brim. "Oh dear," she said, quiet, not to anyone. To the bucket. She bent and tried to lift it. It was too full. Water sloshed over the side and darkened the hem of her gown. She set it down and pushed her damp hair from her eyes with the back of her wrist. She did not look angry. She looked like a person adding one small task to a list she was already carrying. He set the logs down against the wall. "Beg pardon, miss," he said. "Let me." She turned. Her eyes went to him and did not go past him. She looked, and she took in the coat and the boots and the mended cuff, and none of it made her step back. "Are you new?" she said. "Yesterday, Mrs. Peel took me on for the fortnight." "What's your name?" "Crispin Vale, Miss." "Miss Vale," she said it plain, without any weight, and something inside his chest that he had not known was tight loosened a small notch. She said his false name the way she would have said any name, without pressing on it. "The bucket is too full for me. If you would please empty half of it into the drain and then carry the rest to the scullery, I would be grateful." "Yes, miss." He did it. She stood while he did it, not watching him work, exactly, but not walking away either. She was looking at the sky in a considering way. When he set the half-full bucket on the scullery stone, she said, "Thank you, Mr. Vale, Miss." She did not smile. She did not thank him. Twice. She gave him a small nod, the same nod he had seen the head groom give the second groom, the nod of one person acknowledging that another person had done a thing well. Then she went inside, and the door shut, and the smell of the kitchen rolled out one warm moment, and was gone. He stood in the wet yard, with his hands still cold, and he did not know why his heart was beating the way it was. It rained again, the third night. He was in the loft over the stable, and the wind came through a gap in the boards and put out his candle twice, and he lay in the dark and listened to the horses shift below him. He thought about her thank you. It had been such a plain, small thing. In London he had been thanked 100 times a week, in rooms lit like day, by women who lowered their eyes over fans, and men who held out their hands as if he were doing them a favour by touching them. None of those thanks had lodged in him the way this one had. She had not known who he was. That was the whole of it. She had thanked him the way she would have thanked any wet stranger in her yard, and he had felt, standing there in his mended cuff, more visible than he had felt in all his years as a duke. The next day, he saw her cross the yard again, and this time she stopped by the dog. The dog was old. It was a big lame thing with a grey muzzle, kept mostly for its bark now, tied on a long line under the eaves. Its coat was wet, and it lay with its head on its paws, and when she came near it lifted its head only a little. She knelt in the mud, not caring for her hem, and she put her hand under its jaw, and she said something to it in a voice too low for him to catch. Then she stayed there a moment more, with her hand on its head. The dog let out a slow breath. She got up and went on. She had not looked around to see if anyone saw. It was the kind of small kindness a person only gave when they thought they were alone. He stood by the woodpile and did not move for a long time. On the 5th day the sun came out. The house dried in patches, and the yard steamed, and Mrs. Peel opened the great front windows and had every rug beaten in the drying wind. He was sent to help with the rugs. The beating stick was ash wood, worn smooth by many hands, and the dust rose up in great slow clouds and made him sneeze. He stood in the shadow of the wall and worked, and he saw and heard what he was not meant to see and hear. Miss Ashcombe had a sister. He had known of the sister from the father's letter, Petra Ashcombe, 2 years older, and married last spring to a country baronet whose land bordered the Ashcombe manor. The letter had mentioned her the way one mentions a piece of good news. He had not thought much of it. Petra came in her husband's carriage that morning, with a maid and 3 trunks, and a small dog on a red ribbon. He heard her before he saw her. She had a laugh that came in 3 quick beats, always the same 3, as if she had practiced it once and never changed it. She swept into the front hall in a green silk that was much too fine for a morning visit to her own family, and she called for her sister in a voice that carried out into the yard. "Merrin, Merrin, dearest, come down. I must tell you everything at once." He did not go inside. He had no reason to. But the front windows were open, and he was beating rugs not 30 feet from the drawing-room window, and if he worked slow, he could hear every word that carried out on the still air. He worked slow. He did not mean to eavesdrop. He told himself this once, and then did not tell himself again, because it was not true. He meant to eavesdrop. He was here to see the truth of this house, and if the truth was to be spoken in that drawing-room, he would hear it. Petra's voice came clear and merry. "Oh, but it is all arranged. Papa has written to his grace. He is to come next week. Next week, Marin. Do you understand? A duke. In this house. Papa says the settlement will be more than enough to lift the whole family. And think what it will mean for me, for my children when they come. The connection alone." He could not hear Miss Ashcombe's answer. Her voice was too low. He heard only the shape of it, a short sentence. Calm. "Oh, do not be tiresome," Petra said. "You cannot possibly refuse. Papa would not survive it, and neither would I. And truly, Marin, look at yourself. You are not a girl who can afford to be particular. You have no dowry to speak of. You have no charm to speak of. And you have that dreadful habit of saying what you think as if anyone had asked. A duke, Marin. A duke has agreed to look at you. Do not, I beg you, waste it by being yourself." There was a silence in the drawing-room. He stopped beating the rug. The stick hung in his hand. Miss Ashcombe's voice, when it came, was very quiet, but it carried. "I will meet him, Petra. I said I would meet him. I did not say I would perform for him. You will perform for him, or I shall never forgive you. Then perhaps you will not forgive me." Petra laughed the 3 quick beats. "Oh, do not be dramatic. It does not suit you. You have not the face for it." The Duke, who was not a duke here, felt something move in his chest that was very close to anger. Not the polite, cold anger he used in London to end matches and settle debts. A hotter thing. He set the stick down slow against the wall, and he made himself pick it up again and go on with the work. He beat the rug harder than he needed to. Dust rose in a great cloud, and he stood inside it, and he breathed it, and he thought. He did not see Miss Ashcombe come out of the drawing-room. He heard the front door open a while later, and he heard soft steps on the gravel. And then she was around the side of the house, and coming toward the kitchen garden. And she did not know he was there. She stopped by the low wall of the garden and put both her hands flat on the stone. She stood like that. She did not weep. Her shoulders did not shake. She only stood, with her hands on the stone, and she breathed once, twice, a third time, slower. Then she straightened, and she smoothed the front of her gown, and she went into the garden and began to pinch the dead heads off the last of the roses, as if that had been her plan all along. He watched her from the shadow of the wall until she had done a full row of the roses. Then he went back to the rugs. That night he lay in the loft, and he thought about what he had heard. And he thought about the hand on the dog's head, and he thought about the way she had said his false name without pressing on it. He thought about Petra's laugh in 3 beats. He thought about the words, no charm, and not the face for it, and how they had been said in the same voice a person uses to comment on the weather, and how that was worse than if they had been shouted. He had come to Ravenwood to see whether this match was safe. He had his answer. But he found he was not, at the end of it, thinking about the match. He was thinking about Marin Ashcombe standing in the kitchen garden with her hands on the stone. He was thinking about how a woman like that had been told, in her own drawing room, that she had no charm. He was thinking about what a life must have been to teach a woman to breathe like that and then straighten and go on. He did not sleep well. The next morning he went to the kitchen early. Mrs. Peel was already there. She looked at him over her cup, and she did not miss the shadows under his eyes. "You'll be wanting bread, Missy Vale," she said. "Yes, ma'am." She put a thick slice in front of him with butter and a small pot of honey. He looked at it. Honey was not a thing given to a day labourer at breakfast. He looked up. "Miss put it out this morning, Mrs. Peel said, without looking at him. "For any of the yard men who came in wet the last 3 days. She did not name you. She named none of us. She only said it was cold, and honey would do us good, and to put it on the board and let it be taken." He looked at the honey a long moment. He said, "That was kind of her." "Miss Ashcombe is kind," Mrs. Peel said. "She does not make a show of it. She would not thank me for telling you. So you will not thank her either. You will only eat it." "Yes, ma'am." He ate it. The honey was clover, and it was very sweet, and it clung to the roof of his mouth all through the morning. He tasted it in the yard while he was carrying feed. He tasted it while he was fixing the shutter he had already fixed once. He tasted it when he stopped in the passage and heard Petra's laugh again from the drawing-room. 3 beats. Always the same. He knew, standing in that passage with clover honey on his tongue, that he was going to do this. He was going to marry her. He had known it, perhaps, since the bucket. But he knew it now, with the certainty a man has when he has weighed a thing and set it down. He was going to have to tell her who he was. He put it off one day. He told himself he was being careful. He was still gathering the shape of the house, still listening to Petra sweep through the rooms and complain about the linens and correct her sister on how the flowers had been arranged. He watched Miss Ashcombe carry each small cruelty and set it down without answer, the way a person carries a stone from a field and puts it neatly on the wall. She did not throw stones back. She did not save them either. She only put them down. On the 6th night, he was in the passage after supper, carrying an armful of logs to the small parlour because a fire had been asked for. He came round the corner and almost walked into her. She was standing in the passage with a candle. The flame lit the underside of her face and made a small warm world of the two of them in that narrow place. The house was quiet. Somewhere far off, Petra laughed. "Oh, Miss Ashcombe said." "Miss Vale, Miss," she did not move aside. She looked at him as if she had been on her way to think about something else, and was, for the moment, only here. "You have been at the shutters again?" "Yes, miss, they were fixed yesterday." "Yes, miss, the wind loosened the top hinge on the west one. I thought I would take another look." She considered him. Her eyes were grey in that light, and steady. "Miss Vale," she said, "may I ask you something?" "Yes, miss. Where are you from?" His mouth was dry, and the honey from the morning was long gone. "North of here, miss, not far. You do not speak like a man from north of here." His pulse went once, hard, and then settled. "No, miss. I was some years in service in a great house. I picked up the way they spoke there." "I see." She did not say she believed him. She did not say she did not. She only said "I see," in that same plain voice, and it was worse than any accusation could have been, because it meant she had heard him lie, and had not decided yet what she would do about it. He shifted the logs. "Miss, if I may pass, of course. Forgive me." She stepped back. "The parlour fire has been laid for an hour. My sister asked for it, and then forgot she had asked. I will lay it, miss." "Thank you, Miss Vale." She said his false name that way again. Plain, without pressure. And he thought, going past her, that he did not deserve to be thanked by that voice, not with the coat on his back that he was wearing. Not while he was still Crispin Vale in her passage. That night, in the loft, he decided. He would tell her in the morning. He would not wait for the day the Duke of Ravenwood was expected. He would not let her be surprised in a room full of Petra's laughter. He would go to her at first light, before the house was up, and he would give her back his true name, and he would let her be as angry with him as she needed to be. He was in the yard before dawn. The air was cold enough that his breath came out white. The house was dark, except for one window in the back, and he knew that window was the small morning room where she sometimes went to write letters before anyone else was awake. He stood in the yard and watched the window until a lamp was lit inside, and then he went to the kitchen door and knocked. Mrs. Peel opened it. She had been up already. She looked at him and she saw something in his face, and her mouth thinned. "Mrs. Peel," he said low, "I must speak with Miss Ashcombe. Alone now. That is not for you to ask, Missy Vale, please." She looked at him a long moment. He would think later that she had known. He would think that she had perhaps known from the first day, from the way he sat on the bench without checking the wood under him, from the way he answered her "yes, ma'am," without any of the small pauses of a man who had spent a life being ordered. She had said nothing. She had let him be Mr. Vale. But now, in her kitchen, in the grey hour before dawn, Mrs. Peel looked at him and made a small sound like a woman confirming something to herself. "Sit," she said. "I will fetch her." She fetched her. Miss Ashcombe came in wrapped in a wool shawl, with her hair not yet dressed for the day, in a plain braid down her back. She stopped in the doorway when she saw him, and she looked from him to Mrs. Peel, and Mrs. Peel gave her one small nod and went out and closed the door behind her. They were alone in the kitchen. The fire had been built up, and it snapped once and settled. The room smelled of yesterday's bread and today's kindling. He stood up when she came in, and he did not know what to do with his hands, and so he put them behind his back the way he had been taught as a boy in a house much grander than this one. "Mr. Vale," Miss Ashcombe said. She sounded tired, but not afraid. "What is it?" He drew a breath. "My name is not Crispin Vale." She did not move. She only watched him. "My name is Crispin Ravenwood," he said. "I am the Duke your father wrote to. I am the man you were told would come next week. I came early. I came in this coat and this mended cuff because I have been lied to before, and I did not want to be lied to again. I meant to see the house and the family plane without any of you knowing I was here. I meant to leave in another day and come back next week as myself, and pretend I had never been under your roof." She said nothing. She sat down in the chair by the fire, slow, as if she were being careful with a hurt she did not want to jostle. "I have been in your house 6 days as a servant," he said. "You have thanked me for carrying a bucket. You have put honey on the board for the wet men in the yard, and you did not name any of us so we would not feel small for taking it. You have knelt in the mud beside an old lame dog because you thought no one was looking. You have stood in your garden after your sister said a thing to you that I will not repeat, and you have breathed 3 breaths and pinched dead heads off roses instead of weeping. I have watched you do all of these things, and you did not know I was watching, and that is why I know they were true. I am here to tell you that. I am also here to tell you that I have deceived you, and that I am not asking your forgiveness for it. I do not think you should forgive me for it. I only wanted you to hear it from me, not from your father, not from my footman when he arrives with my trunk next week. From me, in the coat I wore while I lied." He stopped. He had said more than he had meant to say. He waited. Miss Ashcombe looked at the fire. Her braid lay over one shoulder. The braid was uneven at the end, as if she had done it herself in the dark, without help. She looked at the fire a long time. Then she said, "You watched me in the garden. Yes, you heard what my sister said. Yes, you heard the part about my face. Yes, she did not look at him. Get out of my kitchen," she said. "Miss, get out." Her voice did not rise. It sharpened. "Get out of my kitchen, Your Grace. Get out of my house. Take your horse and your mended cuff and your ducal curiosity, and get off my father's land. You have seen enough. I have not seen enough." She turned her head then. Her eyes were dry, and they were furious. "You have seen more than any man has a right to see of a woman he has not been introduced to. You have watched me at my worst hour. You have listened at my window like a boy under a gate. You have eaten my honey while wearing another man's name. Do not tell me what you have not seen enough of." He held very still. "You are right. Do not agree with me. Do not do that. Do not use my anger as a coat you throw off when it becomes too warm. I am not throwing it off. Then wear it and go." He looked at her. He looked at the shawl around her shoulders and the uneven end of the braid, and he thought, very clearly, that he did not want to leave. He thought that if he left this kitchen now, he would spend the rest of his life ashamed of the coat he was wearing, and that was a fair price and he would pay it. He nodded. "I will go," he said. "I will come back next week with my true name and my true coat, if you will still receive me. If you will not, I will accept your refusal. I will not press your father. I will not use the settlement to press you. If you tell me at the front door that you have chosen not, then I will bow, and I will go, and there will be no cost to your family for the refusal. You have my word on that. I know my word is not currently worth much to you. I give it anyway." She did not answer. He went out. The kitchen door closed behind him with a small, firm click. He stood one moment in the yard with the cold sinking into his coat, and then he walked to the stable, and he saddled his horse himself, and he rode down the drive in the grey, and he did not look back. He rode 6 miles to the inn. He put on his own coat. He took out his signet ring. He sat down in the private parlour, and he wrote 3 letters. One to his own steward. One to his aunt in London, whom he trusted to be honest with him. One to Mr. Ashcombe, thanking him for his hospitality in advance of the visit, and confirming that the Duke would arrive as planned on the appointed day, and that His Grace hoped Miss Ashcombe was well. He waited 5 days. They were not easy days. He walked much. He read little. He ate what the inn set before him. He thought about the honey, and about the dog, and about the way she had said "get out" with her voice steady as a bell. He thought that he had done this to himself, and that self-pity was not owed to a man who had earned the thing he was mourning. He kept walking. On the 6th morning, he put on his good coat, and his good boots, and his signet ring on his right hand, and he took a proper carriage from the inn, and he arrived at the front door of the Ashcombe Manor at the hour that had been named in the letter, and he handed his card to the footman as the Duke of Ravenwood, and he waited in the hall. Mr. Ashcombe came out to greet him, kind and nervous, with his hands rubbing together as if they were cold. Petra came out behind him, with a smile pinned very neatly to her face. She curtsied low. She murmured the correct things. She looked at him with an appraising glance she probably thought he did not see, and then she looked past him to see if he had brought any other men of rank. He had not. "My daughter will be down shortly," Mr. Ashcombe said. She was. She has been indisposed these last days. A small chill. She insists she is well now. "I am glad to hear it," the Duke said. He was shown into the drawing-room. It was the same drawing-room from whose open window he had heard Petra's 3-beat laugh. He walked to the chair he had been directed to, and he sat. And he waited. She came in. She was dressed simply. A pale green gown, no jewels except a small locket at her throat. Her hair was up now, dressed by a maid, but a strand had come loose at the temple, and she had not smoothed it. She was very pale. She came in and she curtsied to him, and he stood and he bowed, and neither of them said a word for one long moment. Petra bustled forward to introduce them, and stopped short, because the air in the room had gone somehow taut, and she did not know why. "Miss Ashcombe," the Duke said. His voice was steady. "It is an honor." "Your Grace," Miss Ashcombe said. She met his eyes. She did not flinch. She did not smile. She did not look away. Mr. Ashcombe cleared his throat. Petra opened her mouth to fill the silence with something charming, but the Duke spoke first, gentle, and to the father. "Sir, if I may, I should like to walk in your garden with Miss Ashcombe, if she is willing. The morning is fine, and I have been much indoors. Of course, Your Grace, of course. Petra, my dear, perhaps you. I will walk with His Grace alone, Papa," Miss Ashcombe said. Her voice was quiet and did not invite argument. "If His Grace will permit it, I permit it gladly." Petra's mouth closed in a thin line. Mr. Ashcombe blinked, and then he nodded quickly, and the two of them went out into the garden together, and the door shut behind them. The garden was the same garden. The roses were done. The kitchen wall was there. The low stone was there, where she had stood with her hands flat and breathed. She led him down the gravel path, with her hands clasped in front of her, and she did not speak until they had gone round the far bend, out of sight of the drawing-room window. Then she stopped. She turned to him. She looked at him in his good coat, and her eyes moved once over the coat and back to his face, and she said, "You look different. I am not different. I am aware." They stood in the path. A small bird moved in the hedge and stopped. The garden smelled of turned earth and wet box. He put his hands behind his back. He waited. "I did not tell my father," she said. "I know." "How do you know?" "Because if you had told him, I would have been refused at the door. He would not have received me. He is not a man who could sit in the drawing-room across from a man who had lied to his daughter." "You are correct. He would not." She drew a breath. "I did not tell him because I did not know yet what I wished to do. I still do not know. That is fair. Do not tell me what is fair. I know what is fair." He inclined his head. "Yes," she looked away at the hedge. "You said you would accept a refusal at the front door. You said there would be no cost to my family." "Yes. Did you mean it?" "Yes," she turned back. "Then I could refuse you here, and my father would be told the match had failed for reasons of temperament. And Petra would be furious. But the settlement would still be honored to the extent you offered in your original letter?" He thought about it. He did not answer quickly. "The settlement I offered in my letter was a betrothal settlement. Without a betrothal, it does not stand. But I will do this. I will settle upon your family. Refusal or no, a sum sufficient to clear the debts your father named in his letter to me. That is not a bribe. That is a debt I owe you personally, for what I did under your roof." She was quiet. Then she said, "That is a great deal of money." "It is not, in fact. To my father, it is a great deal of money. Then let it be a great deal to your father. It is not a great deal to me." She looked at him for a long moment. She was working something out in her head, and he did not interrupt. "Your Grace," she said at last, "why did you come back? Because I said I would. That is not the reason. Try again." He almost smiled. He did not. He said, "Because I do not want to marry a woman who weeps prettily in a drawing-room and laughs cruelly at a stable boy in the yard. I have almost done that once. I have been careful since not to do it again. I came to your house because your father was honest in his letter, which is rare. I stayed in your house as a servant because I trust no one, which is a fault. I saw you kneel in the mud beside a lame dog, and I saw you put honey on a board for men whose names you would not shame by saying, and I saw you stand in this garden with your hands on that wall after your sister told you that you had no charm and not the face for a duke's notice. I saw you carry that and set it down, and go on with your day. Those are the things I saw. I did not see one of them from the drawing room. I saw them because I was in your yard in a mended cuff, and no one was watching me, and no one was watching you. And it was true. I could have come as myself and been shown into that drawing room and been bowed to and offered tea and watched you say the right things for a fortnight. I would not have known you at the end of it. I know you now. I came back because I do not want to unknow you. That is the reason. She had not moved while he spoke. She listened the way she had listened to Petra 6 days ago, without interruption, without softening her face. When he stopped, she looked past him at the hedge, and then back at him. You listened at my window, she said, not angry now, just naming it. Yes, you heard my sister say those words about my face. Yes, you are going to have to promise me something if this is to go any further. Name it. You will never quote those words to me, not to reassure me, not to defend me, not to tell me they are wrong. You will not use my sister's cruelty as a stick to prove your kindness. Those words are mine. I will carry them, or I will set them down. You will not lift them for me. Do you understand? Yes, say it back. I will not quote your sister's words to you. Not to reassure you. Not to defend you. Not for any reason. Thank you. He waited. She was still looking at him, and he thought perhaps she had one more thing to say, and he did not want to hurry it. There is a second condition, she said. Name it. If we are to try this, you will not disguise yourself again. Not for any reason, however good. Not in this house, not in yours, not in any inn between them. If you cannot trust me with your name, then you cannot marry me. That is not negotiable. Agreed, you agreed too quickly. Consider it. I have considered it. I agreed slowly. Inside, I have considered it since the moment I stepped out of your kitchen. I will not do it again. She let out a small breath. Not a sigh. A small letting go. She looked down at the gravel between them. Then I will not refuse you at the door. He did not move. He did not step forward. He said, That is not the same as accepting me. No, it is not. What is it? It is agreeing to be courted, Your Grace. Properly. In my father's house, and in yours. In the ordinary way, over months, in front of witnesses, with letters, and with visits, and with all the small, tedious pieces of it that people usually take for granted, and which I intend to take very seriously. If, at the end of that time, I still know you, and you still know me, then we will speak again. That is fair. Yes, may I write to you? You may. May I address you by your given name in the letters? You may not. Not yet. Then I will not. Good, they stood a moment more in the garden path. The small bird came back to the hedge and made a soft noise. He said, Miss Ashcombe. Your Grace. There is one more thing I would say. Say it. I am sorry. She looked at him. She did not answer for a long moment. Then she gave him a very small nod, the same nod he had seen her give the headgroom on the second day, the nod of one person, acknowledging that another had done a thing rightly. I will accept the apology, she said. I will not forget the offence. Those are different things. They are. Come, my father will be wondering. They went back up the gravel path together, side by side, not touching, in the plain light of a garden morning. The house rose ahead of them. Somewhere inside, Petra was speaking to a servant in her 3-beat voice. He heard it through the open window as they came near, and he saw Miss Ashcombe's shoulders set a small degree, the way a woman sets her shoulders before she picks up a heavy basket. He did not speak. He walked beside her and let her set her own shoulders in her own time. Petra was in the hall when they came in. She rushed forward, and her smile was very bright. Your Grace, my sister, I hope she has not tired you with her country talk. She does not go into company often, and she can be. Miss Ashcombe was not tiring at all, the Duke said. His voice was gentle. It was also very final. She was, in fact, the best company I have kept in a great while. I hope I may call again tomorrow. Of course, Your Grace, Mr. Ashcombe said quickly, from the doorway. Of course. We shall be honoured. Petra's smile stayed pinned. Her eyes moved once, quickly, over her sister's face, looking for the trick. She found none. It was not a trick. Her mouth thinned only for an instant, and then the smile was back. How lovely, Petra said. How very lovely for us all. The Duke bowed to Miss Ashcombe, and then, more carefully, to Miss Ashcombe. He caught her eye. She did not smile, but her eyes were steady on him, and something in them was not the fury of a kitchen at dawn. And that was enough. He rode back to the inn. That night he wrote to his aunt in London, and he told her he had found the woman he intended to marry, and that it would take some months, and that his aunt was on no account to come north to hurry it. His aunt wrote back at once and said she would not dream of it, and would come next spring for the wedding, if there was to be one, and the Duke folded the letter and put it in his pocket, and did not answer that part. He called at the manor the next day, and the day after, and the day after that. Each visit was short and correct. He was received in the drawing-room. He was offered tea. He accepted it. He drank it. He did not ask to walk in the garden alone with her more than once a visit, and sometimes not at all. Petra hovered when she could. Petra found reasons to be in the room. The Duke was polite to Petra. He answered her questions in short sentences that could not be turned into gossip. When Petra tried to correct her sister in front of him, small things, on the arrangement of the tea things, on the choice of a shawl, the Duke did not defend Miss Ashcombe. He had promised he would not. He only let a small silence fall after each correction, and Petra came, in time, to hear the silence, and she stopped filling it as often. 2 weeks in, on a wet afternoon, he came to the manor and found the household in a small, quiet crisis. Mrs. Peel's sister in the village had fallen ill of a bad fever. Mrs. Peel had gone at once, of course. There was no one to answer the door but the young footman, who was nervous, and no one to see to the fires but the boy from the yard. The Duke did not comment on this. He was shown into the drawing-room and offered tea by a hand that shook slightly. He drank the tea. He asked after Mrs. Peel's sister. He was told what little the family knew. He said his farewells at the ordinary hour. He rode away down the drive. Then, a mile from the house, he turned aside, and he rode to the village, and he found the small cottage where Mrs. Peel sat by her sister's bed. He did not go in. He spoke to the vicar, who was in the yard. He arranged, quietly, for the sending of a good doctor from the town, and for the settling of the doctor's fee, and for the paying of the small rent on the cottage for the next quarter, so that Mrs. Peel would not have to worry about it. He did all of this with no fuss, and gave his name only where it could not be avoided, and he asked the vicar particularly not to mention the arrangement to Mrs. Peel, or to any member of the Ashcombe family. The vicar, who was not a fool, agreed. The Duke rode back to the inn. He did not mention it in his next letter to Miss Ashcombe. He did not mention it on his next visit. He did not mention it at all. Mrs. Peel came back to the manor 3 weeks later. Her sister was well. The doctor had been very good, and had refused any payment, and Mrs. Peel did not entirely understand this. It was the vicar, in the end, who told her plainly, because the vicar felt that a woman ought to be allowed to know who had helped her. Mrs. Peel told Miss Ashcombe on a Thursday morning in the kitchen. She told her the way she told most things, without adornment. The Duke of Ravenwood had sent a doctor to her sister. The Duke of Ravenwood had paid the rent on the cottage without being asked. The Duke of Ravenwood had told the vicar to say nothing. The vicar had said something anyway. That was all. Miss Ashcombe was rolling out pastry when Mrs. Peel told her. She did not stop rolling. She was quiet for a moment, then she said, "Thank you for telling me, Mrs. Peel. You should know. I should. Thank you." She rolled the pastry a moment longer. Then she said, quiet and mostly to herself, "He did not say." "No, miss, he has been here 4 times since." "Yes, miss, and he did not say." No, Miss Ashcombe set down the rolling pin. She looked at her flour-dusted hands. She looked at the fire. She did not weep. She did one thing. She pressed the heel of her hand to her mouth, one brief, hard press, and then she took it away and picked up the rolling pin again. "Thank you, Mrs. Peel," she said. Her voice was quite steady. "Yes, miss, that afternoon, when the Duke called, she took him into the garden without asking her father's leave, and she walked him down to the far end where the wall was. The wall she had once stood against with her hands flat, and her breath counted. She stopped there. She turned to him. "Mrs. Peel's sister," she said. He looked at her. He said nothing. He did not deny it. He also did not confirm it. "The vicar told her," she said. "The vicar told her. You asked him not to." "I did. Why did you do it?" He thought about it. He had been learning, a man who had to think about answers before he gave them, in this house. He said, "Because Mrs. Peel was kind to me when I did not deserve kindness. Because you were fond of her, and because you would have been distressed if she were distressed, and I could prevent the distress without anyone knowing. It was not, if you are asking, done for you. It was done because I could do it. That is what I wanted to hear." "Is it?" "Yes, why? Because if you had done it for me, it would have been a gift. Gifts must be answered. And I am not ready to answer a gift." "That is fair." Yes, she did not step closer. She did not touch him. She looked at him a long moment in the wet garden. Then she said, "You may address me by my given name in your next letter, Your Grace." Once, not always. Once, he inclined his head. "Thank you, Marin, not now," she said quick. But her mouth almost turned at the corner. "In the letter." "In the letter." Yes, they walked back up the path together. Petra was at the window. She saw them come, and her mouth did the thin thing it did, and she turned away. The Duke did not look at Petra. Miss Ashcombe did not look at Petra. They walked back into the hall side by side, and Mr. Ashcombe met them with tea, and the afternoon went on. The courtship continued into the winter. There were letters. He wrote hers by hand, and sent them with no seal but his own. She wrote his by hand, and sent them without seal at all. He addressed her as Miss Ashcombe in all letters but the one, and in that one he used her given name once, in the middle of a paragraph about a book he had been reading, and she read the paragraph 3 times over. He came to Ravenwood in December, and she came with her father to visit for the new year, and she saw the house of the man she was to marry, if she chose to marry him, as herself, in her own coat, at the front door, in daylight. Mrs. Pale had come with them. Mrs. Pale looked at the Duke in his own hall and gave him one small nod, the nod of a woman who was, at last, addressing the man she had suspected all along. The Duke returned the nod with all the gravity of a man being greeted by a person of rank. Mrs. Peel's mouth twitched. She went to see about the trunks. He walked Miss Ashcombe through his house. He showed her the library where he read in the evenings and the small study where he did his estate accounts. He showed her the kitchen. He did not particularly show her the drawing room. He walked her out through the kitchen door into the yard and across the yard to the stable, and he stopped at the loft ladder. "I stayed here," he said. "Where?" "Up there." 6 nights. She looked up at the loft. She looked at the loft a long time. "May I go up?" "If you wish." She went up. He followed her. It was cold. The straw was fresh, put down last week for a groom's boy, but it was the same. The gap in the boards was still there. The wind still came through it. Miss Ashcombe stood in the middle of the loft floor in her good travelling coat, and she looked around and she said, "You slept here." "I did. You had a house 40 miles from here, where you could have slept in a bed with 4 posts and a proper hearth." "I did. And you slept here." "I did." She was quiet. Then she said, "It is a very small place." "It is. It is not what I would have imagined for a duke. It was better than the drawing rooms I had been in." She did not answer that. They came back down the ladder. He held it steady for her without touching her hand. In the yard she looked up at him, and she said, "I will marry you, Crispin." He had not known she was going to say it there. He had thought perhaps in the library, or in the garden the next morning, or, more likely, that they would come to Easter without her yet having said it. He looked at her in the wet yard beside his stable, in her plain travelling coat, and he felt something in his chest which was not the tight anger of London drawing rooms, and not the sharp practical care of a man solving a problem. It was a quieter thing. It was, he thought, the feeling of a small door opening in a wall he had not known was a wall. He said, "I will marry you, Maren, yes, yes." He did not kiss her. He did not have the right yet. He took her hand, only her gloved hand, briefly, in his own gloved hand, and he lifted it a little and let it go. She looked at her own hand as if it were faintly surprising. Then she looked at him. "Petra is going to be very disagreeable about this." "Yes, for a very long time." "Yes, I will not care." No, she gave him her small nod, the one he had come to know, and she turned back toward the house. He followed her a step behind, and he watched the way she walked across his yard, as if she had always been going to walk across it, and he thought that he had been right about the coat and the mended cuff and the 6 nights in the loft, and he thought that he would tell her so, one day, when she was ready to hear it. Not yet. Not now. Later, they were married in the spring. It was a small wedding. His aunt came from London, and she liked Maren immediately, in the plain, honest way his aunt liked people or did not. Petra came in a new silk, and laughed her 3-beat laugh at all the correct moments, and was, on the whole, better behaved than anyone had expected, which the Duke privately believed was because Maren had spoken to her sister once, alone, and had said whatever it was she had said in her calm voice, and Petra had received it in a way that had lasted at least through the ceremony. What Maren had said, she never told him, and he never asked. They came back to Ravenwood in the early summer. The house was full of open windows and light. Mrs. Peel had come with them to be housekeeper, which she said was because the Duke's housekeeper was old and wanted to retire, and which the Duke said was because Mrs. Peel wished to make sure he behaved himself, and both were true. In the second week, on a warm evening, the Duke and his wife walked in the kitchen garden. The garden was small and neat. The roses were just beginning. Maren stopped by the low wall of the garden and put both her hands flat on the stone. She did not do it because she was distressed. She only did it because it was there, and it was warm from the sun, and it was a habit she had. She breathed in, she breathed out. She smiled, a small, quiet smile, the first true smile he had seen from her, and he found he did not want to name it or point at it, because to name it might scare it off. He only stood beside her. She turned her head. "Crispin, yes, you have not said one thing about my face in a year. No, you will not say it now. I will not." "Good." She looked back at the wall. She left her hands on the warm stone a moment more. Then she took his hand, bare fingers to bare fingers, without any glove between them for the first time, and she led him back up the path toward the open kitchen door, from which the smell of new bread was drifting out into the last hour of the light. Thank you for staying with this story, until the very end. If this moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive.